Hello, I'm Doug McConnell, and we've got some great discoveries for you out here along the open road.
We'll visit the largest wetlands restoration project on the West Coast and see how things are progressing at a freshly breached site where bay waters are reclaiming a piece of its shoreline.
Oh, wow, look at that.
We'll see the sights and hear the sounds of wetlands coming back to life as we paddle our way to one of the newest and biggest restoration projects in the bay. And we'll get tips on some of the best places to walk, paddle, access, and enjoy our beautiful bay. If you were to travel back in time 150 years or so, you'd see miles of wetlands and marsh ringing San Francisco Bay.
You can just imagine, literally thousands of acres with tides coming in, hundreds of thousands of birds, steelhead, Chinook salmon, bears.
But in more recent times, most of these wetlands have been destroyed.
Over about 150 years, about 90% of the bay wetlands were lost to development.
These days, massive efforts are being made to bring these precious wetlands back. As we now know, they serve as a critical tool in the fight against climate change and sea level rise.
They basically provide friction as wave energy comes in from San Francisco Bay. They slow the water. They act like a big sponge.
Restoring the bay's wetlands and shoreline is the key objective of San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, an agency created in 2008, funded by a parcel tax approved by Bay Area voters.
It's a $12 property tax, and that adds up to $25 million per year over 20 years, so $500 million, all to benefit the bay and its habitats.
The Restoration Authority has helped fund dozens of projects around San Francisco Bay. One of the largest is the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project.
So back in 2003, 15,000 acres of former salt production ponds were acquired from the cargo company and returned into public land management for the purpose of restoration. And so we've been, in the years since then, restoring these former salt ponds back into tidal marsh.
It is the largest wetland restoration project on the West Coast.
Even as big as this project is, it's only one piece of the puzzle. There are a number of other large-scale restoration projects going on in the North Bay, in other parts of the South Bay, and they are all trying to do a combination of things, which is provide marsh habitat for the benefits of wildlife, but also for people.
Executive Project Manager Dave Halsing has been working on the Salt Pond project since 2012. He explains that when it comes to restoration projects, bigger is better.
It is a well-established principle of restoration ecology that if you had a choice between 10 1-acre parcels of land or one 10-acre parcel, you would choose one large area. It's better for the wildlife. That connectivity is really important. It develops much more complexity in the habitat, a variety of heights of plants, ages of plants, things like that, which is another sort of ecological benefit of these larger scale restoration projects.
There are benefits to the environment, benefits to wildlife, and for us humans.
So a larger area of marsh not only can clean the waters by absorbing pollutants and things like that, also draws carbon dioxide, an important greenhouse gas, out of the atmosphere. And marshes are a form of flood protection, resistance to sea level rise and storm surge and wave runup and these things that we're going to see more of in the future as the bay levels rise. Marshes absorb that energy, they disperse the flows, they absorb the water.
One of the most recent areas of restoration is here at the Ravenswood Ponds, adjacent to Bedwell Bayfront Park in Menlo Park.
This pond over here hadn't had tidal flows in it in over 100 years.
On December 13th, 2023, amid a cheering crowd of onlookers, the levee of this 300-acre old salt pond was breached, allowing bay waters to rush in and reclaim another piece of its shoreline.
It was just dry salt pan, sort of crusty moonscape, a mix of salt and dirt and gypsum and things like that. But what's going to happen is every time the tide comes in through that opening, it'll leave a little bit of sediment. And eventually that will reach the right elevation where plants will start to take root on that newly deposited sediment.
This area is closed to the public. You give me a sneak peek back here?
It is, yeah.
Dave leads me down to a levee off limits to the public, where on one side is an existing mature marsh, and on the other, the site of the freshly breached restoration area.
If we look straight ahead of us at the end of this levee, you know, this levee used to continue all the way out and along to the breach location. We've shaved it down so that eventually at the highest tides, the water will run across it, and that will help revegetate this center area and be a nice sort of migration corridor for the animals that live in the marsh, and they will have access to the 300 acres of new marsh that we're creating just over here.
So this is kind of the before, this is kind of the after, and basically right now it's you guys have done a lot of work engineering this and getting it ready for nature, and now this is nature taking it back. The water is fully in, the birds are coming back. I mean, this thing's working.
It's working. We're already getting a lot more wildlife use in here now.
To make sure it's working, all restoration projects include a monitoring program where water quality is tested and fish surveys are done before and after a breach.
It's a nice big one. Staghorn sculpin, you see the horns there.
The fish surveys that we do are conducted with a small motorboat moving very slowly through a channel and dragging behind it a small net. And they pull in the net, they drag it up, they stop moving the boat, and they sort through the net and they see what they got. They count the number of individuals, they count the number of different species they have, and they type them, they measure how big they are, and then they re-release them.
Juvenile striped bass.
And the idea there is to understand the size and the sort of composition of the different kinds of fish and invertebrates that use the habitats in and around the restoration project area.
And how are things going?
It's too early to tell at this particular site since it's only been a month or so, but every place else that we have opened up a former salt pond to the tides, we see numbers and going up and the balance shifting to the kinds of fish we want.
All signs are looking good for this newly restored area. In the coming months and years, with nature back in charge, this old salt pond will go through a transformation that will benefit us all. And if you want to know what Ravenswood might look like 10 years down the line, you can go just up the road to this spot. This is Bear Island, part of the Don Edwards San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge.
So this is the Bear Island Restoration Project, and this is a great way to see what we're trying to do over at the Ravenswood Project.
Renee Spence is a biologist with Ducks Unlimited and has been involved with many restoration projects over the years, including here at Bear Island. She explains that there are two types of restoration projects: passive, as was done at Ravenswood, which involves minimal human intervention, and active, as we see here at Lower Bear Island.
And the big difference is that when you're doing an active project, you're actively importing the sediment in order to basically set the baseline conditions to wetland elevations.
According to Renee, it took 5 years, over 1 million cubic yards of dirt, and heavy machinery carving tidal channels to ready this area for breach.
We want to do as little as we can to get things set on the right trajectory and then rely on natural processes. And then nature will come and do its thing. If we can just get ourselves out of the way, the tides will come in and it will turn this place into a habitat mosaic.
On the day we visit, it's teeming with life, a good sign of the project's success.
If you were able to get up in a helicopter, you would see Bear Island, and then just not very far away at all is Ravenswood. And these projects, as we continue to implement them, are going to form this interconnected mosaic of habitats all around the edges of San Francisco Bay. And at the end of the day, people will forget the name of this place or that place, but they're going to recognize that we've created a more healthy bay together.
When we come back, we'll paddle to one of the newest and biggest wetlands restoration projects on the bay and get some tips on great places to enjoy the bay.
OpenRoad is made possible by the generous support of our underwriters, dedicated to protecting our natural and historical treasures in the Bay Area and beyond. Additional support is provided by these institutions, also caring for our special environmental and cultural legacies and making them accessible to each and every one of us, now and for all time.
As the effects of climate change and sea rise ramp up, restoring the bay's wetlands becomes increasingly important. And not just any kind of restoration, large-scale restoration.
When you get into that scale, different things begin to happen. That's when natural processes begin to work. Being able to get a large tide coming in twice a day, those tides are delivering sediment, the building blocks of the future wetlands. In the fall, they're bringing in hundreds of thousands of seeds. So instead of paying people to go out and plant by plant by plant, it comes in with the water.
The benefits of functioning intact wetlands are many.
These are the areas that are storing and sequestering carbon. These are the areas filtering the pollutants. These are the areas helping our economy by providing nurseries for Dungeness crab and, salmon. There's so many benefits that come for free when these areas are intact that we have to pay so much for when they're not functioning.
But large-scale restoration can't happen just anywhere. You need space, lots of it.
When you're trying to restore wetlands, or you're trying to restore anything on a large scale, it can't be towns and cities and international airports.
Opportunities for large-scale wetlands restoration is fairly limited around San Francisco Bay. As we've seen, the South Bay Salt Ponds project is one area. Another one is here in the North Bay.
We call this the Sonoma Creek Baylands.
And with funds from San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, a plan has been created to restore a huge swath of land back into tidal wetlands. The Sonoma Creek Baylands Restoration Project includes over 6,000 acres at the northern edge of San Pablo Bay, between Highways 37 and 121. Much of the area up here is lightly developed agricultural land that offers an easier path to restoration than lands with heavy development and infrastructure.
Look at it all. It's a flat area comprising 10, 15,000 acres, maybe 20,000 acres. All of it used to be seasonal wetlands, it used to be tidal wetlands.
Julian Meisler is a Baylands Program Manager with Sonoma Land Trust, one of many organizations involved with restoration work up here.
Well, a little before 2020, we received a grant from the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority using Measure AA funds to prepare what we call the Sonoma Creek Baylands Strategy with partners of Ducks Unlimited and Sonoma Water and the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Just getting started on the design of more than 6,000 acres. That's large scale. We're at a really exciting time.
One of Sonoma Land Trust's newest acquisitions that will be a part of this big restoration project is a former hay farm just a few miles from this spot called Camp 4. While some level of public access will be available in the future, Julian offered to give me a sneak peek, accessing it by boat.
So Julian, we're driving to go launch the canoe, and we see all these waterfowl. What's going on out here?
Well, interestingly, we are on Skaggs Island Road, heading to the Hoodeman Slough boat ramp, and we're passing Camp 5. So this is another property that we're working on acquiring, and it will be part of that 6,000 acre restoration.
So there's a good sign, all this waterfowl, all the waterfowl out here, there's a good sign.
It's a good sign. Look, there we go.
Oh, wow, look at that. Wow.
Wow. Good timing.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. And ready to flip. Some serious mud. This mud is like knee deep.
After wading through some deep mud, We launch our canoe from a small boat ramp and begin to paddle ourselves upstream to have a look at the new land acquisition.
There's probably about 200 feet of marsh vegetation that we'd be walking through before getting to the levee. We call them fringing marshes, and so they're fringing the edges of these channels. And since all the marshes were destroyed a long time ago, this is all that remains.
Julian explains that these narrow bands of marshland fringing the edges of agricultural fields are all that's left of the wetlands that once dominated the landscape here, and they are critically important.
A lot of endangered salt marsh harvest mouse, probably Ridgway's rail, and habitat for all kinds of species.
We don't see any endangered species, but we do spot some wildlife.
There he goes.
And soon enough, we reach the edge of Camp 4.
So basically we're paddling up the slough here. To our right is the Camp 4 property, and that's the new acquisition by Sonoma Land Trust, and we're just looking for a place to to be able to get out, but it's awfully muddy because it's low tide.
Stay real low.
All right, yeah, low is good. We find an old pier that offers a way to avoid the mud and safely transfer to land.
All right, so we made it off the boat here. We're walking through some serious shrubbery.
And after a bit of bushwhacking, we finally get our first glimpse of Camp 4.
All right, set us up. What do we got here?
Yeah, so you're looking out over 1,150 acres of Camp 4.
You're gonna be in charge of restoring this back into wetlands. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I think it's just such a unique and wonderful opportunity that you don't get too often. Big acreages. We're going to do 6,000. It's going to tie into these sloughs that we just paddled up. It's going to be full of wildlife. It'll take a little while, but no better time to start than now.
All right, high five. Good adventure.
Yeah, buddy.
When we come back, we'll get tips on some of the top spots to walk, paddle, and bird along the bay. As we've seen, San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority has been doing great work all over the bay, protecting and restoring shorelines and wetlands. One of the great things about all their work is that there's more access to the bay for all of us to enjoy.
And joining me now is Li Huo with another great organization, San Francisco Bay Trail, and you are going to tell us actually three great spots to access and enjoy San Francisco Bay, and we're going to start right over the hump here at a place called, is it Dotson Family Marsh?
Dotson Family Marsh, thank you very much. I love talking about the subject. Dotson Family Marsh is one of those few places in kind of an urban environment and somewhat industrial that you can go visit, but it's beautiful wetlands. And there's a very long boardwalk, one of the longest that you can actually go on along the Bay Trail. And there's this wonderful little spit that you can walk on also that takes you out and makes you feel like you're right on the bay almost. And there's, during the flyway season, during the falls and spring, you can actually go out there and see some shorebirds, egrets, herons, and if you're super lucky, I've also seen some hawks and falcons in the area as well. And there's some great picnic tables out there if you want to take your lunch there.
All right, well, I haven't been there. That sounds like a place I got to check out. But another place to check out, actually way down in the south part of the bay, is Eden Landing, right? So, and I think that's near Hayward.
That's right.
So tell me about that place. What can you do there?
Eden Landing is fantastic. It's one of the spaces that you can really see the magnitude and the scale of the restoration work that the Restoration Authority and all these other people in the Bay Area are doing to kind of take over and redo the ponds out there so that they become habitat again. So you can really go out there and see wildness. And if you go out there during the flyway season, you can see lots and lots of birds. If you're super lucky, you can see sometimes hundreds, potentially thousands of shorebirds.
And is that a place also that you can access via a kayak or a boat? Do they have a boat launch down there?
That's right. There's a great boat ramp out there. It's one of the few spaces along the bay that you can actually kayak and canoe inside a slough.
Nice. Okay. And the last spot you're going to tell us about is what?
It's going to be Heron's Head.
That's right.
Over in San Francisco, which is actually a very hidden jewel inside a very urban area. of San Francisco. It's industrial space. It used to be industrial, it's still a little industrial.
So that's in the Hunters Point area, right?
That's right.
That often gets overlooked, but you shouldn't overlook it. You should go out there and tell me what you see there.
It's essentially an oasis. It's a wetland oasis in the middle of this, again, industrial area. You go out there and you can see terns, you can see ducks. I've seen loons out there. Last time I was out there, I saw some hawks as well. Pelicans diving occasionally. So you go out there and it's one of the few spaces where you can actually feel like you're out of the city. And there's also down the way in Indian Basin a few places that you can go to where you can picnic and barbecue, and there's a playground there as well. There's a lot of work going on in that area to try to reclaim more of the space for wetlands and open space. Part of it's part of the restoration project,
right.
The 900 Innis.
Yeah, I've been down there. That place is going to be amazing. I think for folks who are watching this to check before you go down there to see, because there's a lot of construction. It's gonna be stunning, but maybe check before you go down there. But Lee, those are great suggestions. Thank you. I'm gonna go check out at least 2 of these.
I hope everyone has fun.
OpenRoad is made possible by the generous support of our underwriters, dedicated to protecting our natural and historical treasures in the Bay Area and beyond. Additional support is provided by these institutions, also caring for our special environmental and cultural legacies and making them accessible to each and every one of us, now and for all time.
We'll leave you tonight with some images of the places San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority is working so hard to protect. For information about San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, or any of the places we visited in tonight's show, go to nbcbayarea.com/OpenRoad.